Hi, I'm the Mike at michaelbearvoice.com. I record voiceover, I make videos, and when I'm not doing either of those two things, I love to make Kumiko. Last week I intimated in another little video I'd made that I would make some Shippo using yellow cedar. I started out in Kumiko making square Jigumi, or the grids. Making square Jigumi with the frames is relatively straightforward. You're just cutting 90-degree half lap joints. Making the hexagonal or diamond-shaped grids is much more difficult. There's a level of complexity that is much higher because you're dealing with three-way half lap joints. It's a complicated little grid, and it requires a lot of very careful cutting. I don't want to curse it, but geez, I think it's actually going pretty well. But here's the rub. With square Jigumi, the infill, the things you're going to make inside those grid spaces in the Jigumi, the infill patterns can be difficult to make, can be challenging to make. Whereas in the hexagonal grids, the infills are easier, and it has something to do with geometry, something to do with math, but it's true. So it's harder to make the hexagonal rigs, jigs, frames, Jigumi. It's harder to make the hexagonal Jigumi, but it's easier to do the infill. And the reverse is true of the square. Anyway, so I feel like I can make a hexagonal Jigumi, and that's what we're going to start. These are just rough cut, rough length. Making the hexagonal Jigumi starts, as every piece of Kumiko I make does, with basswood. There are two different pieces in a hexagonal grid. There's an A piece and a B piece. The B pieces have two separate cuts in them that are 1/8 of an inch, or in my case 1/8 of an inch, because each cut is 1/3 of the piece's thickness, which again is why I like to use the 3/8 inch strips, because it's easy math. And if you know anything about me at all, you know that Pythagoras and I do not get along. We do not talk. I'm not a math guy, but I can figure out that 1/3 of 3/8 is 1/8. So you cut your 1/8 inch 60-degree half lap through your piece, you flip it, and you do the other edge exactly the same way, and you just repeat that. The second piece is the A pieces, which are 2/3 of the thickness of the strip. In this case, 2/8, which is 1/4 inch. Again, I can figure that out. It's fairly easy. And then you flip it to the opposite fence. So you're cutting through the same joint, but you're cutting it in such a way that you're going to leave a little point right in the middle. You want that point to be right in the middle. The B pieces you can think of as the spine, and you lay out your spine, and then your A pieces cross on both sides of that. So you put in your A pieces across all those joints, and then you flip the Jigumi over, and you put them in the other direction, and that's what gives you your hexagonal shapes. And if everything is cut precisely, it'll snap together beautifully. So once I get all the strips shaved down in the sled to a 1/16 of an inch, or just above a 1/16 of an inch thick, I'm going to use a bit of a cheater. I've had this little Weaver mini chop saw, and it is a lifesaver. The most important thing it does for me is it gives me a square cut. And I cannot stress enough how in Kumiko every cut needs to be absolutely square, true, plumb. It just has to be. It has to be dialed in. If you're not dealing with a square face, you can have some problems. So it's quicker for me. I find that using my Dazuki saw or any kind of saw, I can easily wander in a cut. That's not 90 degrees, etc., etc. So I just find that this is a very quick way to do it, and it gives me the kind of squareness and the trueness in my cuts that I need, that I don't do so well with by hand. In this case, these pieces are cut to 2 inches, and these are what I'm going to bend. Each flower in the Shippo pattern is going to require 18 pieces. Let's call them petals, let's call them leaves, let's call them whatever you want to call them, but each one's going to take 18. So multiply that by the number of flowers you want to put into your Jigumi, easily you're over 100. So there's a lot of cutting to do. Each of those 100 or more pieces requires a 60-degree bevel on the end. And so I get my bevel block, I set up my stop, I figure out the length that I need, and then I just shave until I have a pile. I put in maybe a dozen or more at a time. I boil the water. throw them in the pot, and then I put on a timer for about 5 minutes, roughly speaking. I'd probably get a little shorter because this would bend so easily, but I put on a timer for 5 minutes. When that's done, I simply pull them out one at a time and I bend them over this block with the bevel side down. Always to remember that the bevel side has to go down or be looking in or down. And then I simply flex that into the Jigumi space using some combination of big fat thumbs and fingers. And then it's just a question of repeat, 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 repeat. Once it's all done, I'm going to let that dry. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to put some weight on it so that there's a lot of moisture in that wood, and it's going to take a while to get out until that dries, and I leave it overnight. So I'm going to let all that stuff dry, and then the next day I'll pull all of these little pieces out once they're dried, and then I'll just put a dab of glue in and I'll glue them in place so I know that they're going to stay there. This is the semi-finished piece. So this has been glued, it's been roughly surfaced. I just have to figure out what I'm going to do for the framing. But yeah, I kind of like it. I think it looks good vertical. I think what I'll do is wind up putting I'm not sure actually. I really don't know. But I do know that I'm going to be quite happy with it because I think it looks great. Oh, look at that. A little piece just came loose. Oh, I must have missed that one. This is why we put glue in. You don't know how these things are going to be handled or what kind of service life it's going to have, what people will do with it. So I better get to putting a dab of glue in that to fix that up. But anyway, yeah. There's your Shippo pattern in a hexagonal Jigumi. Thanks for watching.